Today's video is a change of pace. I want to take some time to discuss an extremely important issue that I haven't seen brought up anywhere. It's an issue that has negatively affected every vanilla server, and it has the potential to completely destroy the PvP scene in Classic. Most of you guys have probably seen my videos that took a deep dive into the meta of pre-made versus pre-made battlegrounds, which are my favorite aspect of vanilla. Now that you've seen that type of gameplay and have a better understanding of the incredible depth that exists in pre-made versus pre-made play, imagine what a shame it would be if these types of competitive games never happened. Sadly, that will be the case on most Classic servers, unless Blizzard comes up with a way to prevent queue dodging. I hate dodgers. They have made my life miserable on more than one occasion. The last thing I want to do is promote dodging or teach people how to do it. I will be discussing a few specific dodging methods in this video because I believe this is an important part of fully understanding the problem and starting a discussion about solving it. Dodging has been a problem on every private server for years, and it's definitely not a secret. Anyone who is going to do it already knows how. All I'm trying to do is get this issue into the public eye and spark a discussion that hopefully results in dodging not even being possible on Classic. By the way, the gameplay shown here is going to be mediocre footage of me turtling an AV on a poorly geared mage. Defending an AV seems to make people mad, and dodging makes me mad, so I thought it was a good fit. Dodgers aren't worth wasting decent footage on anyway. So, for anyone who doesn't know, queue dodging is when a pre-made battleground group intentionally avoids playing games against other pre-mades, instead only accepting queues against pugs. Dodging is a tactic used by scummy pre-mades to be able to mindlessly farm honor without having to play difficult or time-consuming games against other pre-made teams. It's a very easy and very accessible way of cheating the system, and it has toxic side effects that ruin battlegrounds for the entire server. My goal with this video is to raise awareness of this problem while there is still time to find a solution before Classic comes out. First, I'll explain how the honor system is intended to work gameplay-wise, and how dodging undermines its design. Next, I will discuss the unseen side effects of dodging, how it affects casual players, and how it slowly kills a server's PvP scene. Finally, we'll discuss some possible solutions that Blizzard could use to prevent dodging on Classic. Let's talk about the honor system. The honor system is obviously designed to reward time investment above everything else. Regardless of how skilled you or your group is, you simply cannot achieve the top ranks without playing for obscene amounts of time. So everything I'm about to say is assuming that the top pre-mades on your server are playing 14 plus hours per day, because 99% of the time, this will be the case. The spirit behind the honor system is that the best pre-made on each faction earns the top standings. What makes you the best pre-made? Farming honor the most efficiently. This means being able to win games quickly and consistently. Here's an example. Let's say there are two pre-mades on the same faction, pre-made A and pre-made B. Pre-made A is dominant. They win every game against pugs in less than 10 minutes, and they are typically able to defeat enemy pre-mades in less than 20 minutes. Pre-made B is not as skilled of a group. They win most of their games, but when pugs turtle against them, it often takes them 20 minutes to finish the battleground. Pre-made B also struggles against enemy pre-mades, spending 30 plus minutes in tough games that they often lose. In this example, pre-made A is clearly the better team. They are more efficient at farming pugs, and they are able to consistently beat the enemy pre-mades. Therefore, pre-made A will come out on top of the weekly standings. In a perfect world, pre-made B would look for ways to improve their setup and tactics in order to win games more efficiently and compete with pre-made A in terms of honor per hour. Sadly, this rarely happens because there is a much easier alternative: queue dodging. Let's continue the example. Pre-made B has realized they can't compete with pre-made A in terms of honor per hour rates, so pre-made B decides to start dodging the enemy pre-mades that are giving them trouble. There are tons of different ways to dodge, but for this example, we will use spying, the most basic method. Someone from pre-made B makes a level 1 alt on the opposing faction, and uses /who or the friends list to keep tabs on the enemy faction's pre-mades. The leader of pre-made B queues his group for Warsong Gulch, and when the queue pops, the spy checks the other faction. If an enemy pre-made entered Warsong Gulch at the same time as pre-made B's queue popped, the spy tells his group to drop their queue. Pre-made B then waits for that game to fill, and then re-queues to get a different game against pugs. All pre-made B has to do is rinse and repeat this method, and they will almost always outfarm pre-made A. While pre-made A is frequently spending 20 to 30 minutes and hundreds of gold worth of consumables to win tough games versus other pre-mades, pre-made B is just cruising through pugs and rattling off easy wins. On top of all of this, pre-made A will now face enemy pre-mades twice as often as before because pre-made B is no longer accepting any of those queues. Pre-made A is now in a difficult position because the only way they can realistically continue ranking up is if they also start dodging. This quickly creates a vicious cycle where nobody can afford to play time-consuming pre-made versus pre-made matches because they have to worry about keeping up with the honor per hour rates of the dodgers. It's easy to see how all it takes is one group of lowlifes to start dodging, and PvP on your server will quickly become a circle jerk that's more about cheating the system than actually playing the game. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking, I'm never going to go for rank 14, so this doesn't affect me. Wrong. Dodging affects the whole server, even casual players, especially casual players. Time for another example. Let's say a server has 4,000 players online, 2,000 Horde, and 2,000 Alliance. There are 2 pre-mades on each faction, and a total of 100 PvPers queuing, enough to fill 5 Warsong Gulch games. You are a solo queue player who just wants to do a few BGs for fun, and you queue up. If none of the pre-mades on your server are dodging, you'll have roughly a 40% chance of getting into a game against one of them. You are also guaranteed to get pug versus pug games while the pre-mades are locked into long matches against each other. However, as soon as the pre-mades start dodging, your chances of getting stuck in a game against them goes up to 80%. This results in a horrible experience for you as a casual player. Dodging is like a cancer. As soon as one pre-made starts dodging, the server becomes poisoned. The other pre-mades feel pressured to dodge in order to keep up, and PvP becomes extremely toxic for casual players. Dodging ruins the game for everyone. It turns getting high ranks into a completely mindless time sink with no challenge, and it makes it impossible for solo queue players to even enjoy Battlegrounds. Once a culture of dodging exists on a server, it is very difficult to undo the damage. Remember that ranking is generational by nature. As players reach their desired ranks, others take their spot in the pre-mades, and the cycle goes on. Once dodging becomes common practice on a server, PvP will never be the same again. This simply cannot be allowed to happen on Classic. Something needs to be done. So, what can Blizzard do to prevent dodging? This is a tricky question because there are so many different ways to dodge. You don't even need a second account or a spy. I had one particular experience with a rival pre-made that took dodging to an industrial level. They would queue up with a sacrifice player, a non-PvPer from their guild, and when the queue popped, they would send him into the game to check the opponent. If it was a queue against an enemy pre-made, they would kick the sacrifice player out of the group and re-queue with a different 10th player. This basically allowed them to open new BG instance numbers at will, always filled with pugs. Meanwhile, my team was getting dumped into all the queues against pre-mades that the Dodgers were abandoning. The most obvious way to prevent dodging is to give players a 15-minute deserter debuff for dropping a queue. This would be a big change, and it would make dodging extremely slow and tedious, most likely to the point that it would not be worth the trouble. A few private servers have implemented this in the past, and it seemed to work decently well. Another fix for dodging that is often requested by more casual players is to force pre-mades into a separate queue where they only fight each other. Unfortunately, while this seems like a good idea on the surface, the actual results are not great. All this system does is make pre-mating extremely inefficient in terms of honor per hour, and the rankers will just find a way to get around it. Methods include queuing in 5-man groups, or even having everyone solo queue at the same time using a countdown and voice chat. Nostarius actually implemented a separate queue for pre-mades at one point, and the results were terrible. As soon as the change went live, everyone simply stopped pre-mating and just solo queued together in voice chat. This separate pre-made queue also created a horrible win trading problem because raid groups were able to open empty games for the other faction by queuing multiple battlegrounds. Eventually, this change was reversed by the Nostarius staff due to the toxic side effects and the rampant win trading. In the end, my opinion is that the best way to prevent dodging is to simply give players deserter for dropping a battleground queue and only allow for queuing one battleground at a time. Multi-queue systems that allow groups to queue for more than one battleground at a time typically produce low-quality games. When the Warsong Gulch queue pops during an Arathi Basin game, whichever side is losing will all just hop over to Warsong Gulch. Regardless of how Blizzard chooses to address dodging, this is a huge, huge deal, and will have toxic side effects in the PvP scene of every server if it's not prevented. That's it for today, guys. Similar to the spell batching issue, the problem of dodging is something that I really want to sort of get out there and get people talking about. This has happened on every single vanilla server, and it sucks. It ruins the game for everyone. Try to make Blizzard aware of how big of a threat dodging poses to the integrity of PvP. Let's get people talking about this, and let's get it fixed before Classic comes out. If you're enjoying the content, hit me with a sub on YouTube, hit me with a follow on Twitter, and follow my Twitch channel, because I'm going to be streaming a lot once Classic is out. And remember, guys, friends don't let friends play in dodge maids. See you next time.